is Graham here, living the dream in January 2023. And I'm back at my friend Simon's place in Mesa, Arizona, where we visited Barrett Jackson yesterday. My second time at Barrett Jackson this week. But who can miss a fantastic auto auction, auto show that Barrett Jackson put on here in Phoenix every January. Anyway, back to this episode. Today is Saturday, and therefore it's my last day here in Arizona, and I'm going to be making my long way back to Glasgow tonight on board British Airways on one of their A350 1000s. This is exactly the same service that I took on board British Airways this time last year. However, in this episode, the flight has now changed. It goes into Terminal 3 in Heathrow, so I'm going to have to make a change from Terminal 3 to Terminal 5. And the other thing I've not been able to do is book a window seat, which is without a doubt a vlogger's worst nightmare. So I'm not going to be too sure what I'm going to be able to bring you in this episode as I make my way back from Phoenix to my home airport in Glasgow. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Graham, and this is my wife Fiona, and we have always had a work hard, play hard philosophy. From London to New York, and of course the Caribbean, we live our dream through travel. And of course, the odd cocktail. And here on YouTube, we create our memories while living our dream. So come and join us as we share our memories with you. If you'd watched my same trip report from last January, where I flew from Phoenix back to Glasgow via London Heathrow on board British Airways, all of course with the usual British Airways delays and cancellations, this year I was a lot more hopeful as I entered Terminal 4 here at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, which is of course the home of American Airlines on one side of the freeway and Southwest Airlines on the other side of the freeway. And for the British Airways daily service from Phoenix across to London Heathrow, you check in at the dedicated British Airways check-in area, which just like last year was super quiet, and it took me less than 5 minutes to check in. And I do have to compliment the staff at the British Airways check-in here at Phoenix. Despite the check-in agent thinking that Glasgow was actually in Germany and not the United Kingdom, I was soon heading up the escalators to TSA. I did inquire about the cost to upgrade from Premium Economy to Club World or British Airways' business class on this evening's flight across to London, but they were asking nearly $800, so I gave it a miss. And the other thing that I've given you a miss in this episode is showing you my TSA experience, because you find me on the other side of TSA or airside heading towards the B gates. And I know that last year I gave TSA a pretty hard time. This year was marginally better, with the TSA agent checking my passport, being very friendly, but the poor guy that had to give me the pat down. Yeah guys, I was selected for a pat down. I don't know how that happens, but anyway, he was a bit serious and clearly not too happy at his job. But hey, who can blame him? Just under 3 hours to wait until my flight would be boarding for London tonight, so I decided to have some dinner before I flew. And I know guys, I'm pretty predictable. I went for the burger, which I had to admit was very good. And after dinner, there was very little else to do except to go and sit in the gate area waiting for my flight to be called. And because I was travelling in Premium Economy and I was only a bronze member of the British Airways Executive Club, I had nothing else to do but sit around until the flight was called, which happened about 45 minutes before departure. And like most airlines in the Western world, British Airways board by group number. And because I was in Premium Economy, I was travelling in boarding group 3. But for me, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Because I'm a British Airways bronze member of their executive club, I would be travelling in boarding group 3 anyway. And as I said in the introduction to this episode, I didn't have a window seat tonight, so there wasn't going to be a lot to show you. Being forced to walk through business class and these fantastic Club World suites, I was questioning my sanity if paying $800 would not have been worth it. But in just over 10 hours time, I would have been glad that I didn't spend it, because I was $800 better off as a result. But let's be honest guys, these British Airways World Traveller Plus seats or Premium Economy seats are pretty good. And with a pre-departure glass of sparkling wine, I settled in for this 9-hour and 40-minute flight from Phoenix back to London Heathrow. Okay, let's jump across to Flight Radar 24 and have a look at this evening's route from Phoenix back to London Heathrow. And it started with a pretty long taxi from Gate B23 to runway 08, where we'll be taking off in an easterly direction. Our flight then took us out of Phoenix in a northeasterly direction towards Chicago, passing just to the northeast of Kansas City. We would then leave the United States over Michigan and into Ontario, overhead Windsor, and then overhead Toronto before travelling into Quebec. We started our oceanic crossing overhead Newfoundland, staying well south of Greenland and Iceland, and then making landfall near to Shannon in Ireland. By this point we were travelling in a southeasterly direction, leaving Irish airspace and crossing the Irish Sea just to the south of Waterford, arriving in South Wales near to Swansea and then tracking along the Bristol Channel. And we made our approach to London from the south, before making a number of left-hand turns just to the south of the City of London itself, and then landing on runway 27 left. And tonight's flight was made on board a British Airways Airbus A350-1000 that was delivered brand new to British Airways from the Airbus factory in Toulouse back in June 2023, which meant tonight's aircraft was only 6 months old. And I must admit guys, it really did show compared to the old American Airlines 777-200 that I travelled out to Phoenix on a week earlier. My seat reclined and the footrest came up. The USB sockets all worked. But most importantly, the crew were friendly and engaging. The flight attendant looking after myself at the back of the premium economy cabin was from Edinburgh, and he opened the dialogue talking about the forthcoming Six Nations rugby tournament. And the only complaint that I really had on tonight's flight was the food. By the time they got to myself and my seat neighbour, they'd run out of everything except a chicken dish, which was pretty horrible. And breakfast the next morning was no better. This was billed as a full English breakfast, but I'm afraid American thin crispy bacon along with a soggy scrambled egg and a pretty disgusting potato mix doesn't constitute a full English breakfast. And it's a real shame guys, because I've had the full English breakfast on board British Airways many times in the past, so I'm just going to put this down to poor catering in Phoenix Airport. But all in all guys, it wasn't a bad flight at all. At the end of the day, it was an overnight flight, and despite only being in premium economy, I did sleep pretty well. But the standout feature on board tonight's flight was without a doubt the fantastic cabin crew. So as I said on my flight out to Phoenix a week earlier, if you've got the choice of flying from London Heathrow direct to Phoenix, guys, don't fly American Airlines. It's complete rubbish with appalling staff. Instead guys, use British Airways. The staff are very good, and when British Airways works, they work very well. So we touched down in Heathrow just ahead of schedule. But as I explained earlier, at some point during 2023, British Airways moved their Phoenix service from Terminal 5 here in Heathrow across to Terminal 3. And because my flight to Glasgow was departing from T5, that meant I had to get myself all the way across from T3 to T5. That is where I'm going now. And this, guys, was the Airbus A350-1000 that brought us over to London Heathrow all the way from Phoenix last night. Yeah, I know guys, I couldn't resist getting a photo myself. And of course, transferring terminal at any of the terminals at London Heathrow is fairly easy. You simply follow the signs, or should I say the purple signs, for the flight connections. And the transfer from T3 across to T5 is by bus, so the only thing you do need to watch out for is to make sure you get the right bus to Terminal 5. Of course, travelling by bus between terminals at London Heathrow does mean you're going to get a close-up look at some of these great aircraft, especially this A380 in the livery of Emirates. The bus journey between T3 and T5 at London Heathrow takes a little over 10 minutes. And of course, with T5 being the home of British Airways here at London Heathrow, you're only really going to see BA aircraft, but you might see the odd Iberia, as you'll see a little bit later on in the episode. When you arrive at Terminal 5, this is where you're going to go through passport control and then security again before you can board your next onward flight. For me, that being Glasgow in Scotland. And as you can imagine guys, I'm not going to film the immigration process or the security process here at Heathrow. I don't really want to get arrested this afternoon. But so far everything was going to plan. And as I said earlier, when BA works, it works very well. And once you're through immigration and security, you're into the main British Airways T5 departure hall. But to be honest guys, I didn't have that much time between my flights, so for me it was time to head to the next gate for my flight up to Glasgow. Right guys, that run through T5 took just around 30 seconds, when in reality my walk from the domestic A gates through to the A gates where my flight was actually leaving for Glasgow took just under 8 minutes. And despite travelling in economy this evening, being a British Airways bronze member meant I was in boarding group 3.
Must all be placed under the seats in front of you. This is to ensure that there is enough room in the overhead lockers for the larger wheelie bags. In the event that we cannot stow the large wheelie bags, this will incur a delay to today's departure. The cabin crew will shortly be coming through the cabin to ensure there is no smaller bags or large.
These domestic flights on board British Airways between Glasgow and London, or London and Glasgow, are always very, very busy. And these short domestic flights also see the vast majority of passengers bringing wheelie bags or small cases onto the aircraft. And as ever, the poor cabin crew are left with the headache of managing both space and passenger expectation. And as I said a little earlier, Iberia also use T5 here at London Heathrow. It's not just British Airways. So popping over to flight radar 24 again, it was a pretty standard flight out of London Heathrow's runway 27 left. Shortly after passing 3,000 feet, we started a right-hand turn overhead slough. We then routed up the East Midlands just to the east of Birmingham, overflying Sheffield, remaining on a northwesterly track flying between Manchester and Leeds, and then into Cumbria, where we crossed the Scottish border into Dumfries and Galloway. We then set up for a pretty familiar approach into runway 23 at Glasgow, beginning on what they locally call as one of the Lanark arrivals. And we did the flight today on board a 20-year-old British Airways Airbus A320-200, which has been the backbone of the BA European fleet for some time now, slowly being replaced with the new Airbus A320 and A321neos. And as I explained on my flight down to London just over 9 days ago, on board British Airways, even back in economy, they now give you a bottle of water and a chocolate bar or a packet of chips. Crisps, as they're called here in the UK. And as you can see, I once again chose the Rocky Bar. And as the skies started to darken and we began our initial descent into Glasgow, it's probably a good time for me to reflect on this BA service from Phoenix to Glasgow via London Heathrow, which I made in late January 2024. You know guys, to be completely honest, this flight for me from the US back to Scotland worked out perfectly. The flight left Phoenix on time with no delays, and we arrived back in London Heathrow just ahead of schedule. Yes, I had to transfer from Terminal 3 to Terminal 5 this year, but to be quite honest guys, it was no big deal. It was very easy and well organised. And then this flight departed for Glasgow on time, and we were about to arrive on time. And all of the cabin crew that I engaged with in the entire 2 flights from Phoenix across to London and then from London up to Glasgow were great. I know the food wasn't fantastic, but not everything can be perfect, I guess. And yes guys, just in case you're wondering, it was a pretty blustery evening when we arrived in Glasgow, and the lady next to me in the middle seat was certainly panicking. I thought she was about to start screaming.
A very warm welcome to Glasgow, the local town. It's 5:15 in the afternoon. Please remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened until the fasten seatbelts have been switched off. When it's safe to do so, please take out one items. When opening other lockers, items may have moved and could fall out, causing injury. You may now make and receive calls to us to use all data services only on handheld electronic devices. Please check that you have all your personal belongings before leaving the aircraft. If you require any assistance here in Glasgow, please speak to our ground colleagues who will be happy to help. Those customers who have ordered special assistance to leave the aircraft tonight, please remain seated until the hours around you is clear, and our crew will be on hand to assist you. On behalf of all of us on board British Airways, we would like to thank you for choosing to fly with us today, and look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you and a very good evening.
So guys, that's it for my trip report from Phoenix across to Glasgow via London Heathrow. Would I go as far to say that British Airways are back to the pre-pandemic norm? Well guys, you can ask me at the end of the year, because I've got a couple more long-haul flights booked with British Airways in 2024. So let's see how the rest go. And our next flight will be back to the west coast of the US again on board British Airways in late June. And that guys will form the start of Fiona's and my big Pacific adventure in 24. So I'm not quite sure guys if I will be producing any videos between this trip in January and our next trip in June, which will not publish until the middle of August due to the amount of time that we're going to be away from home. So depending when you're watching this episode, I'm afraid guys, it might be nearly 6 months before my next episode. But I promise you, the next trip is going to be a big one. Until then, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon to be notified when that next episode is published, even if it's 6 months away. And as for this series and this episode, thank you so much for watching.